South African retail giant Shoprite has announced it is leaving Nigeria 15 years after it began operation in Africa's most populous country.
When Shoprite opened its first Nigerian outlet in Victoria Island, Lagos in December 2005, it wasn't just another supermarket launch. It was a symbol of modern Africa. Shoppers who had spent years buying groceries from chaotic open markets suddenly found air-conditioned aisles lined with imported goods, neat trolleys, and the soft hum of automated checkouts. For many Nigerians, Shoprite wasn't just a store, it was an experience, the closest thing to abroad you could get without actually leaving the country. By 2015, Shoprite had become the crown jewel of Nigerian retail. Families went there for weekend outings, couples went on dates under its bright lights, and middle-class Nigerians saw it as a badge of status to say, quote, "I got it from Shoprite." At its peak, Shoprite had over 26 stores in 8 Nigerian states, employing more than 2,000 Nigerians directly and supporting thousands more indirectly. From local suppliers to security personnel, every mall it occupied, from Ikeja City Mall to Novara Lekki to Enugu Polo Park and Ibadan Ring Road, became a landmark of urban progress. But behind that shine was a fragile structure, one that would eventually collapse. Not because Nigerians stopped shopping, but because corruption, the classical, deeply Nigerian kind, made the system rot from within. To understand how Shoprite fell, you have to understand the country it operated in. Nigeria was and still is a market of 200 million people, young, hungry, and ready to consume. But it's also one of the hardest places in the world to run a legitimate business. Every import container that brought Shoprite's goods faced a long chain of informal payments. At Apapa Port, customs officers were not satisfied with paperwork alone. A store manager once described how clearing a single truckload of imported goods could take days of negotiation and envelopes. While Shoprite maintained strict financial reporting to its South African headquarters, the Nigerian system was anything but clean. Power supply was unreliable, forcing stores to spend millions annually on diesel. Local government officials showed up at stores with mysterious levies in quotes, waste disposal fees, signage taxes, development levies, many of which had no legal backing. In a 2018 report, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce estimated that over 35% of business costs in Nigeria went to corruption-related extras, bribes, kickbacks, and duplicative taxes. For a company like Shoprite, with hundreds of suppliers and multiple locations, that figure was even higher. Still, Shoprite stayed. It believed Nigeria's massive population would make it all worthwhile in the long run. But the cracks were already showing. When Shoprite entered Nigeria, it couldn't own its operations outright. Nigerian law required foreign retailers to partner with local investors to operate. Shoprite's partner was Resilient Africa, a joint venture involving local and South African investors. On paper, it looked like a solid structure. In reality, it became a bureaucratic battlefield. Resilient Africa was responsible for managing the real estate side, acquiring land, building malls, and leasing spaces, while Shoprite handled operations. But as with most Nigerian ventures, power tussles soon began. Shoprite's executives complained that local partners inflated construction costs, demanded excessive consultancy fees, and used their political connections to bypass accountability. Some mall projects that were budgeted for $10 million mysteriously ballooned to $17 million before completion, with no clear explanation. Worse still, state governments were part of the problem. To build new malls, permits were delayed unless certain interests, in quotes, were settled. In one southern state, Shoprite's mall project was stalled for over a year because a governor's associate insisted on a personal stake in the property. The corporate culture clash grew toxic. South African managers trained in systems and structure found themselves operating in an environment where process meant very little. Nigerian partners saw the foreign executives as arrogant, while the South Africans viewed the locals as corrupt and disorganized. Retail in Nigeria is not just business, it's politics. Every governor wanted a Shoprite in their states, but not for economic development. It was a symbol of achievement, something to boast about at campaign rallies. Quote, "We brought Shoprite to our people." In many cases, state governments donated land or provided concessions, but these deals were rarely clean. Shoprite often found itself entangled in disputes over land titles, inflated rent agreements, and broken promises. Shoprite's South African executives became frustrated. They had come expecting normal corporate challenges, inflation, competition, logistics. Instead, they found a system where progress depended on who you knew, not what you built. Corruption wasn't just external, it crept inside the company too. Internal audits revealed several cases of theft, false invoicing, and employee collusion with suppliers. Some store managers allegedly inflated stock losses, claiming goods were damaged or expired, then sold them off secretly through back channels. The checkout system, which relied heavily on human cashiers, became another leak point. Cash skimming, where staff underreported sales, became rampant. When a system is corrupt at the top, the bottom learns quickly. The Nigerian factor in quotes, that phrase used to excuse unethical shortcuts, was slowly eating into Shoprite's foundation. Then came the perfect storm, Nigeria's 2016 recession, followed by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Inflation soared, the naira crashed, and imports became a nightmare. Prices changed almost weekly, confusing both customers and managers. The once bustling aisles of Shoprite began to empty. The middle class it had relied on shrank as salaries lost value. Ordinary Nigerians could no longer justify paying 2,500 naira for imported cornflakes when local brands cost half. To make matters worse, the government introduced new taxes, a 7.5 VAT value-added tax, import restrictions, and multiple levies disguised as revenue measures. Shoprite's profits evaporated. In 2020, Shoprite Holdings Limited announced it was re-evaluating its operations in Nigeria. Behind that diplomatic language was a simple truth: the environment had become impossible. By 2021, the South African parent company officially exited Nigeria, selling its majority stake to a local firm, Persianas Investments Limited, owned by businessman Tayo Amuson. Shoprite's iconic logo remained, but it was now a Nigerian-owned brand. The South Africans had finally given up. When Shoprite handed over control, many Nigerians didn't notice. The stores stayed open, the logo didn't change, and staff still wore the same uniforms, but insiders knew everything had changed. Under Nigerian ownership, the cracks deepened. Suppliers complained of late payments. Store shelves often went half empty. Generators broke down for days. The signature Christmas displays disappeared. Without the South African management's strict systems, the rot accelerated. Procurement contracts went to friends of friends. Staff who were once afraid of audits became untouchable. In some branches, sales records were manipulated to siphon money. Customers noticed too. Social media became flooded with complaints. Quote, "Shoprite is now like a local market." Quote, "No lights, no AC, no stock. Prices don't even match the shelves." By 2024, Shoprite Nigeria was a shadow of its former self. What killed Shoprite wasn't poor sales, it was classical Nigerian corruption. the kind that hides in paperwork, handshakes, and urgent requests. It wasn't the dramatic kind seen in scandals. It was slow, routine, and institutionalized. At the top, politicians demanded cuts in every deal. In the middle, bureaucrats stalled progress until quotes appreciated. At the bottom, employees copied the same behavior, taking small shortcuts that added up. It was a perfect ecosystem of greed, a national culture that punishes honesty and rewards connections. Shoprite didn't fail because Nigerians didn't want it. It failed because Nigeria's system punishes efficiency. A company that ran on transparency couldn't survive in an economy that runs on opacity. Ironically, the fall of Shoprite didn't destroy Nigeria's retail scene. It exposed its weaknesses. Smaller Nigerian supermarkets like Hubmart, Just Right, and Ebano have since expanded, adapting to local conditions more flexibly. They understand how to manage the system, sometimes by playing the same corrupt game more efficiently. But Shoprite's story remains a cautionary tale. It showed that even the best international brands can't thrive in a system built to extract rather than enable. As one South African executive reportedly told his board before the exit, quote, "Nigeria is not a market problem, it's a governance problem." He was right. Today, when Nigerians walk through the fading yellow halls of Shoprite, they still see the memory of what could have been, a glimpse of modern retail Africa lost to classical corruption. The escalators still hum, the shelves still stand, but the soul is gone. Shoprite was meant to symbolize progress, but it became another casualty of Nigeria's greatest disease, corruption normalized to the point of invisibility. In the end, it wasn't the competition that ruined Shoprite. It wasn't the economy. It was 1,000 small hands dipping into the system until there was nothing left to sustain it. A once thriving empire of retail brought down not by failure, but by the quiet success of corruption itself. Thank you for joining us today. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you later.